Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a Q&A episode, and I have 3 questions I want to dive into. But first, before I go into that, I just want to go over a few ways you can help support the podcast. So first, if you have found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this podcast. One thing I will say on this, I wish, because I got my first 1-star review on Apple, I wish if you gave anything under a 3, it's like it requires you to send some sort of constructive feedback or something, just so you know, because it's okay. Was it just the episode they didn't like? Do they not like how I set things up? There was that. Again, if you ever give me some sort of rating, I'd love to hear some feedback. Or I wish it was a requirement there for that. But hey, that's part of life, right? You're going to sometimes get those. Anyways, again, I appreciate everybody who listens to this podcast. Next, I have my free masterclass on body recomp, what it is, how to do it. And again, this is completely free, and the link to that is in the show notes. And I also have my nutrition periodization masterclass. And again, I go over each phase, what you need to do in it, common mistakes, adjustments, everything like that, fat loss phase, building phase, etc. Again, the link to that is in the show notes. If you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, and that's where I'm most active on social media. And again, I'm just a DM away if you ever have any questions on anything there with that. One other thing I want to mention before I dive into it is, I guess the last probably 2-ish weeks or so, mic pretty much crapped out on me, and I was in transition there, and I finally got a new mic. So hopefully the sound is much better. Also got one of those selfie lights, so hopefully the light is a little bit better as well too, if you're watching on the YouTubes there with that. Anyways, appreciate your guys' patience with that. I just had a few people reach out and be like, hey, your sound is not good on, I think it was episode 441 with Lars Vino. And it probably is going to be that way on a couple episodes that haven't come out yet, because I had to record without the mic, unfortunately. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's questions. I had a couple questions around skinny fat and like how much protein to have. And so this kind of made me want to talk about skinny fat in general, what it is and how we can work on it. So how I want to do this is, let me see, I have my notes here on this. So I first want to go over what skinny fat is, how we can work on it, and then I'm going to answer the specific question around this avatar. They gave me their body weight and stuff, and we'll tie it all in there. All right, so again, they asked how much protein they need, how many calories they need for being skinny fat. So I want to go over what is skinny fat and how we can fix it. So first, what is skinny fat? So it's someone who appears to be a normal weight, but they have a higher percentage of body fat and low muscle mass. Okay, so they aren't necessarily overweight, but they don't really have a lot of muscle, right? So just think of somebody who's fairly low body weight, or again, they are skinny for whatever their height is, and they just have low muscle mass there with that. If you're someone who has dieted down to be smaller, but then always been unhappy with your appearance, then chances are you are skinny fat, right? So maybe you're somebody who has always tried to diet, maybe you've lost weight and you just never were happy with your look on the way down. Again, you probably have this kind of skinny fat look that we're talking about. And again, this, just to tie this together, this is why I don't just focus on scale weight with clients. We're also looking at building muscle and losing body fat and having more of that body recomp. The good news with this is that if there's some adjustments you can make to fix this if you've done this before, or to avoid it if you are looking to lean out. So if you're somebody who, you want to avoid this look, or you're somebody who's had it in the past, there's some things that we can do here with that. So first, I want to go at it from a standpoint of, why does this typically happen? Why is somebody usually displaying this kind of skinny fat look? What are the reasons for that? So the first reason is no weight training. So obviously, weight training is going to help you build and maintain your muscle. If you've listened to me for any amount of time, you know how big of a proponent I am of building muscle, lifting weights. And this is one of the main reasons why somebody has a skinny fat look. They're just not, and I guess I should rephrase this as, maybe they are lifting weights, or maybe they're doing like group classes, but too much of their workouts aren't geared towards adding muscle or strength, right? Yeah, they're lifting weights, but again, maybe it's, like I said, a group class. Nothing against group classes. From a muscle building standpoint, strength building standpoint, after a little bit, those probably aren't the greatest for that. Again, any exercise is great, so definitely would push people to continue to do that. But if you're not happy with your results, you may want to look at your methods and what you're doing there with that. Or maybe you're just somebody who just does a ton of cardio and it's like, hey, I just like to run, which is fine. Again, that's great. But if that's like your only source of working out, and you're trying to improve your look and be leaner and look leaner, then you're missing the boat here on that. So again, we need to make sure we build and maintain your muscle. Muscle is what gives your body that shape. So again, it's going to give you that toned look. Super important there. It also has a ton of other health benefits. It's obviously going to help it's going to lower your injury risk. It's going to help keep you strong as you age. It's great to help your body utilize the nutrients you give it as well too. So again, a ton of benefits there. I think building muscle also helps you realize you don't need to go as low on the scale as you think. and it can help you eat more overall and still look good. So we can be at a higher body weight, but have a better look. And I think that's In today's world, that's probably a good thing. Again, we don't want to have we don't want our body weight to be too high because that's going to be an issue, but also it being super low probably doesn't set you up very well in today's modern environment. One of the main things being that, again, lower body weight typically means you're going to be expending less calories overall. And obviously in today's world where it's easy to get thousands of calories, we want to try to put as much in our advantage as possible. So again, building muscle can also help you have a higher body weight and look better and maintain that body weight on long term by increasing your energy expenditure. Reason number 2, I see this kind of skinny fat look, or a common reason, is extreme calorie restriction. So this calorie restriction does lead to weight loss. We know that. Yeah, again, this shows up in any like 30-day challenge. This shows up in anything like that, right? Any super low calorie diet. I think one that I've heard like multiple times lately on calls is, I think the Fast 800, I think is what it's called. I'll have to look this up just real quick to see, but I'm pretty sure it's like, again, basically how to combine rapid weight loss and intermittent fasting. It's a book, actually. So great. Super low calories and a fad diet, intermittent fasting. And on the title, it's like recent studies have shown that 800 calories is a magic number when it comes to successful dieting. It's high enough to be manageable, but high enough to be manageable. That's freaking hilarious. What does it say? It's in a high amount enough. That doesn't even make sense. This is literally what it says. It's in amount high enough to be manageable, but low enough to speed weight loss and trigger a range of desirable metabolic changes. Unbelievable. Okay. Anyway, so again, that's one that I've just heard. That's a side tangent there. But again, these are things that are this kind of goes to show these are things that are promoted out there, right? Oh, hey, 800. Again, we know, I've talked about this many times. 800 is, again, it's all dependent on the person there with that, right? So just to say 800 says magic amount. Again, this goes against everything that we typically say there. So anyways, but like I said, this is what's marketed out there. We know that in this process, like it says 800 is manageable enough, 100 calories to be, yeah, if you're 4'5" and weigh, I could see 800 calories being manageable in quotations there. But for anybody else, I don't really see how that could be manageable. Again, obviously there's going to be a lot that goes into it, but anyways, like the big thing here is that we know this calorie restriction leads to weight loss, but you feel like crap. Again, I don't think it's manageable. And I was thinking even more than 800 calories. And it increases the likelihood that you will lose lean body mass, aka muscle. Now, obviously, there's things that we can do in this process to mitigate that, right? Obviously, lifting weights, eating enough protein. But the quicker you go with weight loss, the more likely it is that you're going to lose lean body mass. Yes, you'll lose weight, but you'll lose some lean body mass in the process. And that's going to lead to the skinny fat look. Yes, you'll be lighter. Again, if I didn't care about how people felt, if I didn't care about lean body mass, if I didn't care about long-term health, and I just was like, hey, 30 days to lose as much weight as possible, yeah, let's do freaking 800 calories, right? But these are things that are important and we need to worry about those. If you combine these first two, you will lose weight, but you probably won't be happy with your look, right? And this talk about. So yeah, again, if we're going quickly and we don't feel great in the process, obviously we will probably lose weight, but we're not going to be happy with our look. And again, it's going to lead us to that skinny fat look. So we want to be careful here with extreme calorie restriction. And this is something that I just commonly see with this avatar, right? They've done this at some point, maybe even multiple times. Reason number 3, low protein. Not only do you not weight train and you eat very little in the process, but you also combine this with low protein, which I just talked about. Protein, we know, helps you recover from training, but it also helps maintain and build muscle in that process and can be satiating. So to go back to I feel like this is going to end up being the Fast 800 overview. The thing that we could potentially do, say you're doing that Fast 800, is eat a little bit higher protein to save off some of that lean body mass loss, and for the satiety aspect of it. It definitely is going to help with satiety as well too. And it does use the most energy to absorb and digest out of the 3 macronutrients as well too. We do get this little bit of an energy expenditure increase from that. But again, we want protein. Again, we need to weight train in the process. That's going to send the signal to build muscle, but we do want protein to help complete that process. And if we aren't doing that, we are going to be, and we're combining this with lower calories, dropping weight, we're going to not build muscle, and we may not even maintain the muscle that we do have. And most people don't have as much muscle as they think either, right? So it's this worst of both worlds there with that. Reason number four, people have this skinny fat look is too much cardio training and only focused on the feeling of working hard. Again, it's this overemphasis on cardio and training that makes you sweat and it just feels tough. Okay. So this is, hey, I'm just going to do HIIT training all the time. I'm just going to do, again, these kind of like group classes that really just get your heart rate up, get you feeling sweaty. Maybe it's, hey, in 30 minutes, we can burn the most calories. Or you just do a ton of cardio. You just try to run a ton. You just try to do elliptical a ton. You just do a ton of stair stepper. And again, that's just not going to be something that helps maintain or build lean body mass in the process, which we know is a super important part of this. And it's going to get you that skinny fat look. While any exercise is good, when you combine it with the things mentioned above, an intense style of training like boot camps just doesn't build muscle and give your body that shape that people want, right? So we want to make sure that, again, if we combine it with all the things I've mentioned already, again, this is going to lead to that kind of skinny fat look, right? You're going to lose muscle, definitely not going to build any. Reason number 5, poor sleep and high stress. The other common trait of being skinny fat is poor sleep, high stress. Both of these put your body in a poor position to gain muscle and lose body fat. Studies have shown that those who sleep less don't necessarily have a tougher time losing weight, but the problem is the weight they are losing, it's usually more lean mass compared to those who get a good night of sleep regularly. So now, again, if we're looking at, hey, you're not weight training, you're really restricting your calories, you're not eating enough protein, you also have the training you're doing is just very high intensity, just trying to get the sweat to burn, stuff like that, not really having any sort of adaptation, just that feeling of working hard. And then you also combine it with you're not getting great sleep. This is this recipe for the skinny fat look here. And then again, high stress too, right? If you're just constantly stressed, it could be something where you have higher levels of cortisol. It could lead to a little bit of weight gain around the midsection, or at least making it tougher to lose around the midsection. Not to mention when we have higher stress, we want tastier food. So it's like maybe you're restricting your calories, but you're eating lower quality foods. And again, these are all going to be issues that can lead to the skinny fat look. All right, so let's talk about how we fix it. So first, training. We want to make sure we're weight training at least 2 to 4 times per week. And obviously the emphasis would be on increasing strength and muscle to send the signal to your body that muscle is important, and then it must prioritize keeping it. All you really need is about 45 to 60 minutes per session. And then from a cardio standpoint, we probably would reduce what you were doing if you were doing a ton and have it more focused on steps throughout the week, but also just cardio training that is going to elicit an adaptation of improving your cardiovascular health, not just to do it to burn more calories there with that. But I think the big thing here from a training perspective is just getting that training in, and at least having around 50% of it, if not more, be geared towards building muscle. I think I mentioned the episode recently. It's like, we don't necessarily have to completely get rid of things, the group classes, you can still do a little bit, but you want to make sure 50 to 75% of your training is geared towards building muscle. So I have many clients that will still do like 1 to 2 days of group classes, but we're at least increasing the days that they're going in there, focusing on progressive overload and adding muscle and strength. From a nutrition perspective, if you were somebody that was skinny fat, it does depend on the client, but we could potentially put you at maintenance calories with enough protein. So then that way it's like you really are going to maximize your ability to build muscle. You're going to build a ton of muscle. Your weight may stay around the same. It may come up a little bit, but you're going to have way more muscle, and then we can always diet you later. Or we may put you at a small calorie deficit with enough protein. And again, that's going to allow you'll drop a little bit of weight, or at least be in a good position to drop body fat, but you'll be building muscle in the process. And again, that will be that kind of recomp look, or it will be that kind of body recomp approach there with that. And so again, both of these options would allow you to eat more and give you more energy throughout the day and in your training sessions, which is going to help with adding more muscle. And then obviously protein is going to be around 1 gram per pound of body weight. And ideally, we would make sure you have at least enough carbs and a good ratio of carbs to fats as well too, right? We're not like completely omitting carbs or anything like that, or again, going super low fat. Again, we want to have a good balance and ratio there with our macronutrients. But again, we're either going to put you at maintenance. Again, that's going to put you in great position to build muscle, not really add any body fat, but you're adding muscle. Your body's going to love that, especially if you are this avatar and you've been doing these things that I talked about. And then again, or a small calorie deficit where maybe we lose like 0.25 to 0.5% of body weight per week. Again, that's going to be enough energy to build muscle in the process, but you're also going to lose a little bit of body fat. You'd just be probably hurting the building muscle side of things would just be a little bit slower, but you would still build some muscle in that process. From a sleep stress standpoint, we obviously would work on improving these. We would work on improving your sleep, and we would look at managing your overall stress load. We're not trying to just, hey, you need to get rid of all stress, but we would just make sure that we're managing it and making sure that we're not just doing too much and then also not recovering and not putting our body in good state there for that. So again, both of these will put your body in a better position to lose fat and build muscle. And so now I want to go wrap this up with this particular person. So they said, hey, I'm 120 pounds skinny fat. How much protein? So again, this is going to be around 1 gram per pound of body weight for this person. Again, we would definitely make sure you're weight training, like I talked about. And so for this person, I would give them a range of about 110 to 130 grams of protein per day. Maybe 100 to 120 would be solid, but either way, that's the range that I would give them from a protein perspective. And I like giving ranges because I don't like giving exact numbers there for that. And then they followed it up with Why am I? It's weird. They followed it up with, again, 120 pounds is 19 to 2,000 calories good for me. And it's really hard to say, right? Calorie intake is going to be very individual, and it's also dependent on things like overall health, overall activity, body comp, and diet quality. Again, those are just a few things there with that. Really, what we would do in this situation, we would definitely have that protein set. And then what we can do from here is we would get you within the ballpark, and then we'd make adjustments based on results. So say we start you at 19 to 2,000, you're like, hey, I want to be in that small calorie deficit. And maybe we start you around there, have you log for 3 days, see where your intake is at, set your new numbers. And let's say it ends up being around 19 to 2,000. We would monitor how you're feeling for a couple weeks. We would monitor your weight and see where that's trending compared to your activity. And then if it's outside of that range of say 0.25 to 0.5%, that's where we'll make an adjustment. Let's say you're going slower than that. Hey, do we need to decrease calories a little bit? Is adherence there? Hey, maybe you're seeing results and it's just not showing up from a scale weight perspective. If it's going higher than that 0.5%, we would just talk about, hey, are we just going to go back into old habits here? Or are you okay with this? Are we still feeling good? Are you still able to push your training? Then maybe that's our number. Or maybe because of that, now that's, hey, I do actually want to go with a little bit slower rate of loss and you're losing quicker than that, then maybe we just increase your calories there a little bit. So great question there with that in terms of skinny fat, a super interesting topic. So the next question I had was, is weekly volume or daily volume most important for hypertrophy? And again, this is another good question. I'm going to tie this into frequency for training because I think that's where we can rely on this. So this is a lot like the question of what's most important. Is it daily calories or weekly calories? And they're both important, right? Because like your calories will go into your weekly calories. So they do play a role in that. But I think at the end of the day, what you do throughout the entire week is the most important. So what I mean by that is if you have, let's say one day where you don't train, okay, are you not going to see muscle growth for that day? Probably not, but at least you're not setting the signal to do that. But if you get enough volume throughout the week, you still will build muscle, right? Same thing with calories. If you overeat one day, yeah, maybe you're in a small surplus that day, but that doesn't mean what's most important is what does your entire week look like? Because again, tissue change is going to happen on a longer time scale, right? It's not going to be a one-time thing. And, oh, okay, this is what you did today. This is the amount of muscle growth you get. Okay, cool. All right. Same thing with like calories. It's like, all right, you don't have somebody that reviews it at the end of the day. You're okay. So-and-so was in the surplus. All right. There's 0.8 grams of fat that or 0.8 pounds of fat that they're going to add for today. And we'll check back tomorrow to see what you do. Oh, you ate in a deficit. All right, there goes 0.4. It doesn't work that way. It's typically on a longer time scale with that. So same thing applies for building muscle. So really, long story short, the weekly volume is going to be the most important. However, daily volume is going to be important because it goes into that, because we can't overdo things, right? Just like we could overdo things in one day, we could definitely overdo things from a volume standpoint in one day. So you could do, for one, you could do way too much training volume and yeah, you might see some muscle growth, but you may have just done so much that now you just put yourself into a really huge debt, a recovery debt. And now from that, it's that may hurt you long term. So again, it's daily volume is important because it goes into it, but at the end of the day, it's that weekly volume that's really going to drive things. And I think this is where we can look at frequency, right? So frequency being how often you train a muscle group. And just to rely on the research here, really what it comes down to is, in conclusion, a study done by Brad Schoenfeld, I think 2019, in conclusion, there's strong evidence that resistance training frequency does not significantly or meaningfully impact muscle hypertrophy when volume is equated. Thus, for a given training volume, individuals can choose a weekly frequency per muscle groups based on personal preference. And to me, that tells me that your daily volume isn't as important as what it is for the week, right? You could do 3 days of 4 sets. You could do 2 days of 6 sets. Now, like I said, you do run into an issue where if you do 15 sets, doing 15 sets in one day, that may be a little bit too much. So again, I think that really what this means is we just want to make sure that overall volume is there. I find that 2 times per week is perfect, and then splitting up your volume into that. Now, again, once you get to these like higher amounts of volume, 20, 25 sets, if you ever get there, you might want to start to split those up a little bit. But again, your weekly volume is going to be way more important than what you do in the daily volume. But again, understand daily volume is important and it does impact your weekly volume there with that. All right, last question of the day. What's the highest you've pushed your weight in a build? Do you think you need to go higher? So I'm going to briefly touch on this. So my college days, probably 2013-ish. We're talking when I was like early 20s. I was always around 140 pounds. But then I pushed my weight all the way to 190 in college, right? I heard, hey, if you want to build muscle, you need to eat. So I took that to heart and I was like, all right, I just need to gain weight. And so I really pushed it probably my last year of college. So I was probably like 23. I was on the 5-year plan. And yeah, I just remember really pushing my weight. It was like, hey, every time I weighed in, I wanted to make sure it was higher. Just ate a ton of food. And like I said, I probably got my body weight up to 190. Definitely built some muscle, but I for sure put on a little bit more body fat than I needed to there with that. So like I said, I just literally tried to I literally tried to just increase my scale weight. And then obviously got back down at some point. I probably, after that, probably my lowest was like I think for a photo shoot and my bodybuilding competitions, probably the lowest I got in between 2013 and 2021 was probably 145, 150 for, again, I was like super lean there with that. Definitely looked a lot better at that 145 than I did when I was initially 140 there with that. But at the end of 2021, I pushed my body weight to 180 pounds, but I did it in a much slower and methodical way. However, I still feel like that 180 was that was a little bit too much body fat that I needed and would want to be at normally. I definitely looked bigger in clothes, but with my shirt off and things like that, had a little bit more body fat than I wanted to be. So moving forward, I will probably cap my building phases at around 170-ish pounds. And then just because, again, once I get past 170, I just don't feel as great. My physique doesn't look as good. And that kind of just weighs on you and whatnot. So I think 170 is just that top end. So it's like when I'm in a building phase, so like currently I'm at like 164, between 164 and 165. So here I'm just going to continue to go really slow with it. And then once I get closer to 170, that's where I'll probably be like, all right, probably need to run some sort of fat loss phase here at some point relatively soon to get it back down a little bit so I can still maintain some sort of leanness. And I just think from like an overall health standpoint, insulin sensitivity standpoint, gut health perspective, again, if I just kept pushing it over 170, that's where those things start to decrease. And again, that's not great from an overall health perspective, how you feel, how you look, and all that good stuff. So for me, I think 170 is just my cap for now. Obviously, it just really depends on how much, if you add some muscle, what that looks like. But again, I think expecting to see like this dramatic change in body weight. And, once I put on a ton of muscle, I'll be able to be like 20 pounds heavier and feel different. And I don't think that's necessarily the case, right? I do think that your body weight won't change as much as you think it would long term there with that. Obviously, this is if you're overweight, stuff like that's obviously a different conversation there with that. So yeah, that's the highest I've gone to about 190, 5'6", 5'6.5". I would say, I don't know, 5'6", 5'7", whatever. I'll just say I'm 5'10". But no, I'm definitely like in between 5'6" and 5'7". Hey, 5'6.5". Anyways, so that's where I'm at. 190's been the highest. Don't see myself ever getting to 190 again, at least not on purpose. And I think now I've lowered that to, I think 170 is the cap for me moving forward. And currently I'm about 165 in this building phase here with that right now. Definitely will just continue to go slower. But the cool thing with once you get for me to 165, 170, like I really have to push it and go out of my way to continue to push that. And again, that's going to be different for everybody, but hopefully that was helpful, gave you some insight into that. And that's it for this episode. Again, if you have any questions on like how many days per week you should train, how much volume, if you do have a skinny fat look, how do you fix it? You need some extra accountability, or you just need some guidance in terms of where to head next, then my free 30-minute strategy calls for you. The link to that is in the show notes. Again, if you have questions on anything, you can always shoot me a DM on Instagram. And that's it for this episode. I'll talk to you next time.